All right, I think we'll get started. How does that? Is that okay? All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to UCLA Library. My name is Marta Brunner, and I am the Interim Director of Teaching and Learning Services and head of this library, Powell Library. And I'm pleased to welcome you this afternoon to the 7th Annual Award Ceremony for the UCLA Library Prize for Undergraduate Research. Every day, thousands of UCLA students come to the UCLA Library in person and online to pursue their academic goals. Today we have the privilege of honoring just a few of these students who have distinguished themselves by their passion for learning and their pursuit of knowledge. Each of the students that we recognize today has demonstrated remarkable intellectual curiosity and skills and capacities to conduct meaningful research. The projects that they've produced are compelling, thought-provoking, and inspiring to their faculty, librarians, and peers. For the second year, and thanks to the collaboration of the California Digital Library, students have the option of publishing their award-winning papers in eScholarship, which is our open access research platform for the University of California. This means that these students' accomplishments will be seen by a very broad audience, and we know that their research efforts will be compelling to graduate schools and future employers. We're grateful for the opportunity to celebrate these achievements today. And before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank our distinguished judges. Karen Cunningham, Senior Continuing Lecturer and Faculty Coordinator for Writing in the English major. Karen, is she here? Okay. Diana King, Librarian for Film, Television, and Theater, World Arts and Cultures and Dance, and Gender and LGBT Studies. There's Diana. Lisa Snyder, librarian here in the Powell Library, here in the front row. Raise your hand so people know who you are. There you go. Stephanie Seibert, winner of last year's Best Project in Contemporary Music Award. Is she here? Oh, okay. Warning to the winners, we do put you to work later. And Aradhana Tripathi, Assistant Professor of Earth, Planetary, and Space Sciences with a joint appointment in Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences. Are you here? Okay, not all of our judges could make it. But to all of our judges, we do say very much, we thank you for your enthusiastic participation. And I did receive enthusiastic responses from them via email at various points, like, we got so many great entrants this year. I'd also like to thank this year's Library Prize Committee. Librarians Courtney Hoffner, Julia Glassman, and Bethany Myers put in long hours on this, and thank you. And finally, I'd like to extend our thanks to Melissa Osorio, Kathy Brown, Bob Friel, Steve Sherwin, and Dawn Setzer for their assistance in planning and organizing this ceremony. So thanks to everybody who helped make this possible. And we're delighted to be here today to recognize undergraduate students for their outstanding research and extensive use of library resources. For this competition, the students were required to submit a research paper or project completed as part of their academic course of work. In addition, they were asked to write a reflective essay detailing their research strategies, sources, and learning process. Those essays describe fascinating research journeys on topics ranging from mathematical image processing to negotiations of the Imjin War to a research-based website that shares the stories of Black prisoners in Los Angeles in the 1920s and 30s. Throughout their adventures, these students have found that libraries and their collections and other collections hold invaluable insights relevant to pressing questions about both our present and our future. And I would add the past. Before I announce the winners, I'd like to say a word about the person who made today's celebration of undergraduate research possible. The inspiration for the UCLA Library Prize for Undergraduate Research comes from Ruth Simon, UCLA alumna, former UCLA campus counsel, and passionate supporter of both books and libraries. She's generously endowed the awards being presented today to inspire and reward UCLA undergraduates for excellence in undergraduate research. And this is the first endowment of its kind at UCLA, and it has indeed inspired our students, amply evidenced by the quality and variety of the essays submitted in competition for the 2015 prize. Ruth, will you stand so that we can all thank you for your support? And now, what you're all here to see, I would like to now present the prizes. And Ginny Steele, our university librarian, was going to be here to actually do the presentations. She's unfortunately sick, which means I'm juggling both speaking, handing out things, and shaking hands, and the first one or two might be a little awkward, so bear with me. So we have 8 awards to present today, so let's begin. The Best Minor Project in the Arts and Humanities Prize goes to Anne Zhang for her paper entitled Numeral Classifier Reduplication in Beijing Mandarin. Anne wrote this paper under the supervision of Jessica Rett in the Department of Linguistics. The prize carries a monetary award of $250. Anne, could you come forward? Unfortunately, yeah, you can stay here for a moment. Unfortunately, Professor Rett was unable to be here today, but she's asked me to read a statement on her behalf. Quote, Anne's research on Mandarin pluractionality began last year in the advanced semantics course she took with me. She came to my office hours in the second week with a list of 12 possible paper topics. Is that true, 12? I was enthusiastic about most of them, but cautioned her that one of them would probably be too hard. In retrospect, knowing Anne, it's not surprising that that was the topic she ended up doing. Anne is the first theoretical linguist to highlight the significance of a particular semantic phenomenon in some dialects of Mandarin. By repeating a numeral classifier in certain contexts, a speaker can convey that an action associated with a verb happened more than once. In the course of her research into the topic, facilitated by the UCLA Library, she was able to connect this unusual and very interesting phenomenon to related languages like Telugu, which is a Dravidian language spoken in India, Karitiana, a Tupian language spoken in Brazil, and her work on this topic is already gaining recognition in the field. She's recently presented at an undergraduate research conference at Michigan State University, and I expect that she will continue to do amazing things in the field, end quote. Anne, please come talk to us about this.
So I actually didn't know what she was going to talk about, and then she ended up talking about a lot of things that I was going to mention. So this paper was really kind of important to me because it was one of the first papers that I had written that was about Mandarin, which is my first language, actually. So being able to take this project and make it real has really led me to become closer with my own language and with something that I care really passionately about. I was able to use a lot of library resources to help me do this, and like Professor Rett said, I was able to go present at an undergraduate research conference, which funnily enough, on my way there, I was still reading stuff that I brought from the library. I had a bunch of books out, like, oh, what do I bring on the plane? Oh no, what do I do? So I just want to thank everyone here, and I want to thank the library specifically for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Congratulations, Anne. Our second award, the Best Minor Project in the Social Sciences, worth $250, goes to Alison Malley for her paper, Medical Denialism, Where Must Society Draw the Line? Alison wrote this paper under the supervision of microbiology, immunology, and molecular genetics professor Jeffrey Miller. And if I could have Alison and Professor Miller come up.
Well, I'd like to explain what was particularly tricky about the topic that Alison tackled. She wanted to tackle the question of how do we prevent crackpot science from having bad effects, such as the recent and continuing controversy about vaccines and autism that was based on an incorrect and even fraudulent paper. And that in itself would be a really good topic, but the tricky part is, at the same time that you want to protect the lay public from crackpot science, you do not want to prevent people who are doing good science that goes against the current thinking. So for instance, when Galileo championed Copernicus's ideas that the Earth actually revolved around the sun, that went against all of the current dogma, and he was put on trial and excommunicated and suffered house arrest the rest of his life. And when Darwin finally proposed his theories, they were met with tremendous opposition, as did Einstein's. So just because you're going against accepted dogma doesn't mean that you're wrong. So the tricky thing is, how do you allow freedom of expression and new ideas to develop without imperiling the public with really bad science? And analyzing that takes a lot of serious work, and that's what Alison did so beautifully with the help of the resources of the library, and so that's why I think her project was really, really good. She's a terrific student. Our honors class is just roundtable discussions. We have 20 students. They're mixed majors and mixed years, and Alison was really one of the top 2 students this year, and I think she did a fabulous job, so thank you.
The reason this topic was so important to me is I'm a pre-med student, and I really feel that it's fundamental to understand all the political, social, economic factors that intersect with the world of biology and medicine, and it's actually something that just really, really interests me, which is why I've chosen to do human biology and society as a major, and why I chose to take the class on interactions of science and society. And I think the idea, the issue of medical denialism really exemplifies how closely intertwined medicine is with society. So I wanted to address, one of the things I remember though from high school research papers was struggling to be able to access journal articles and just having the hardest time being able to find the resources that I needed. And I just realized it's just such a privilege to be able to, as a UCLA student, have that access to all the journal articles I needed for primary sources and secondary sources, so that I could really get a comprehensive scope and do a thorough research job. And I felt like, thanks to the UCLA Library, I was able to really dive into the topic and learn so much. So I really want to thank the UCLA Library for making that possible, and also for Professor Miller for allowing me to really explore something that really interested me.
All right. Now, for the best minor project in the sciences, a prize of $250, please help us honor Brenda Pack for her paper, Uranium-238, Thorium-232, Zircon Geochronology for the most recent eruptions of El Chinchon volcano, Chiapas, Mexico. Brenda completed her paper with Professor Axel Schmidt in Earth and Planetary and Space Sciences. Unfortunately, Brenda and Professor Schmidt were unable to make the ceremony today, but Brenda has asked us to read a statement on her behalf. Quote, "Hello, faculty, staff, and fellow colleagues. Thank you for taking the time to come here. I'm sorry to say that I am not able to make it to the reception due to the fact that I am currently at a conference presenting the research I did with Professor Axel Schmidt in Anchorage, Alaska. I would like to say that as a transfer student, there were some challenges to overcome. Aside from those, my best experience here at UCLA was the opportunity to be involved with directed research with Professor Schmidt. The laboratory and plethora of resources, both digital and hardbound, that are available here on campus were definitely invaluable. This overall experience has definitely been an eye-opener in wanting to further my education. I hope that my peers and incoming students will be able to take the advantage to utilize the resources, engage themselves in doing research. Once again, thank you." So congratulations, Brenda. So now we move from the minor projects, which were shorter than 20 pages, to the major projects. The best major project in the arts and humanities, that is, the best project that took more than 1/4 to complete or numbers more than 20 pages, carries an award of $450. This prize goes to Annie Sundelson for her senior thesis entitled Putin's Dirty Little Secret, HIV/AIDS in the Russian Federation. This thesis was written under the supervision of Professor Yelena Furman in the Slavic, East European, and Eurasian Languages and Culture Department. So, Annie and Professor Furman, please come forward. Would you like to give comments first?
Oh, God. Okay. Is this working? Can you hear me? Okay. Not from my angle, but okay. As mentioned, Annie wrote her senior capstone thesis. This was a class that every major in our department, which has recently changed its name. We are no longer, no, you've got the right name. You've got the right name. Yes, we used to be Slavic, now we're this, much longer. Every major is required to write a thesis. And the importance of Annie's project, to my mind, is Slavic cultures and Slavic studies has been maybe a little slower than other fields, perhaps, to discuss certain controversial issues. Putin's and AIDS and his approach to AIDS has been one of them. So her research is very original, it's very timely, and it's very important. And I just want to say that as a student, she's been an absolute pleasure to have in class. She did her research with what I consider a minimal of guidance for me. She picked her own topic, she revised it. It was just a model, absolute model student, the way that we want our students to behave. So, and thank you for the library for recognizing that we all in the department are very, very proud of her. There were emails when we found out she won this award. There were emails flying back and forth between the chair and all her professors, and we're all incredibly happy. And we know what an excellent student she is, but I'm glad that it is now more widely recognized. So thank you to the library and well done.
Okay, so I'm a student in UCLA's Russian flagship program, and for all of you who probably don't know what that is, it's an accelerated Russian learning program, and we're paired with native speakers, so international students either from Russia or students who were born in Russia and are native speakers of Russian who are paired with us to talk in Russian every week. And I remember asking one of my native speaker partners, what's going on in Russia about HIV and AIDS, like what's the situation? And her saying, what are you talking about? There is no situation in Russia, like we don't have AIDS, that's a Western disease. And I thought, like, oh, that's kind of strange. So I started looking it up and found that Russia's HIV and AIDS epidemic is disastrous and one of the world's only HIV and AIDS epidemics that's still growing. and is, strangely enough, unknown to the population, unknown to a lot of us even in the United States, and something that Putin and his administration are not doing anything to help. So I hope my research wasn't too depressing, but it was really interesting to me and it felt really important and meaningful to do.
Okay. All right. For the best major project in the Social Sciences Prize, an award of $450, we honor Yiming Ha. Yiming's History Department honors thesis is titled A Clash of Perceptions, Deceit in the Ming-Japan Negotiations During the Imjin War. It was written under the supervision of Professor Katsuya Hirano. Could you please come up?
He's not here. So my paper topic is about the Imjin War. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's Hideyoshi's invasion of Korea in 1592. And the reason why I chose this topic is because number one, it's not very well known in the West. It's relatively relegated to East Asia. And number two, the recent Sino-Japanese tensions, a lot of people are talking about it as becoming a very big global issue. And actually one can trace it back even before this war. So I chose to study this war and the negotiations that went on to study the superstructure of Chinese superiority and Japanese challenges to it. And when I first started on this topic, I only had two secondary sources. And through the UCLA library, I was able to find dozens and dozens of sources until I was overwhelmed with the number of sources I had. And I had to sort through them to see which ones I needed and which ones I wasn't going to use. And even very late into the writing process, I was still finding new sources and constantly revising my paper so I could use this to support my claims. And I think I want to give a big thanks to the UCLA library, especially the East Asian library, for all the amazing sources they have, and for the librarian's guidance to me in picking sources and helping me translate documents from classical Chinese into vernacular Chinese and English. And of course, a big thank you to my professor, Professor Hirano, who unfortunately is not here, for guiding me through this thesis writing process. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The best major project in the sciences carries an award of $450. This prize goes to Zheng An for her paper entitled Beltrami Energy-Based Partitioning Model for Image Segmentation. This was written under the supervision of Professors Luminita Vies and Dominique Zosso in the Mathematics Department. So, please come forward.
I have my little cheat sheet, so I will not go over the 2 minutes here. I have a lot of things to say because the kind of research you did was actually amazing. There is a sort of a misnomer here, undergraduate research. That sounds like, something, a diminutive, right? It's not supposed to be. The kind of research that Jing has been doing was actually the first element of a project that we have been granted by the NSF, a project grant I've been sharing with Braxton Austin at the University of Utah. It's about the geometric graph partitioning. When we wrote the grant, we knew that this had to work, right? It has to, simply because. But we didn't know why. And the project that Jing has been working on, she studied that model for essentially for 2 quarters. The research that she has been doing is about proving us why the stuff that we proposed in the first place was actually worthwhile doing and would work, and she did that in a great way. So her job was to take the model, go to the library, go to online journals, browse through all these mathematical resources and find these little pieces and proofs that would make the model work. And she did that, and I'm very grateful for her work. She also applied it to image segmentation problem, which is a very relevant topic. So we couldn't be less grateful for what she did, right? It's an easy job for us now to report to the NSF that we did something, she did it. And maybe a little bit for formal context, so we have these 199 classes in the math department, probably other departments have the same format. So she was doing this research as an individual research project with Luminita Visi as the senior faculty and me just being the visiting faculty as trying to mentor her and guide her through the entire process. So credit to her for everything that she did.
Well, I have a cheat sheet as well because math students are not so eloquent. So my research is about a new geometric partitioning model based on Beltrami energy and its application in image segmentation. So when I start this project in the fall, I have no background in differential geometry, where the Beltrami energy derives from. So I walked into the library, borrowed multiple books about the differential geometry, and thankfully, the high-quality resource from the library collections provide me strong foundations to my research. And without the library support on my free accessing to so many math papers and articles, my work couldn't proceed so smooth and successfully. And moreover, I'd like to express my sincerest gratitude to my mentor, Dominic Zoso, and Professor Luminita Visi, and their generous guidance and support. They led me into the world of applied math research, and their passion for math and intelligence has motivated me to be a mathematician in the future. Well, thank you.
Okay. All right. So for the best use of our Clark Library collections, an award of $350, we have Michael Stinson for his paper titled A Good Death. History professor Carla Pestana was his faculty sponsor. Please come forward.
Good afternoon. I don't have a cheat sheet, but I will try to be quick. I want to make 3 points. One is about the class. This is a History 191 class, so it's 1/4 to do original research in primary sources. That is a lot to ask of an undergraduate student, and I caution the students quite frequently to look for something that can be done in that amount of time. They have to read the secondary sources, that is, they have to read what other scholars have written about the source, then they have to find primary research materials, they have to research it, and then they have to write it up, and that is a lot to do in 10 weeks while you're taking other classes, etc. This class was offered at the Clark Library, which if you had not visited, you should, as soon as it's done with its seismic retrofit, get over there because it is a magnificent facility and it has rare books from, among other things, the 17th century. So I was able to take undergraduates to the Clark Library, where I first worked when I was a graduate student here in the 1980s, and show them what it's like to actually handle the original materials that people would have used in the 4th century since then, books that were published in the 17th century, which they used for their research projects. And the librarians there were magnificent. They brought us examples. They talked to us about the different kinds of sources, shared a lot of their treasures with us. I think all the students thought that part of it was really wonderful, and we're very grateful that they allowed us to work there. And then finally, Michael. Michael came to me and said, I don't have that much of a background in this area, and I know that's what you're looking for the students you're interviewing for this class, but I'm really interested in pirates, and I would really like to take it, and can I please come in the class? And I agreed, and then I find out he is also writing an honors thesis in ancient history at the same time. So he presented that research yesterday in our department, and now he's receiving an award for what he did having to do with 16th and 17th century pirates in the Caribbean. So that is an amazing achievement on top of all the other things. He picked an overly ambitious paper. He did an amazing job with it, and I'm very pleased with how this turned out, both for all the students in the class and in particular for Michael. And I want to thank you for recognizing his achievement with this award.
I do have a cheat sheet, so I will be using it. First, I'd like to thank the UCLA Library for recognizing me. I appreciate it. And I'd also like to thank the Clark Library and the librarians there. They were wonderful. They explained things really well. And I'd also like to thank Marta Brunner. Our first day of class was actually at YRL, and she helped us set up a database which was specific to our time period, and it really helped me with my research, so I'd like to thank you too. I will freely admit I was spoiled for this research project. I mean, I get to study pirates in the 16th and 17th centuries, and not only do I get to do that, I get to do it in the gilded halls of the Clark Library, and like she said, if you have not been there, it is worth the trip. But the seas were turbulent. I wasn't perhaps the best student. I would come up with ambitious projects only to find them mirrored on JSTOR or BESCO, and I would be frustrated, and I thought it was all gonna kind of, you know, all my work was gonna be wasted. But thankfully, Dr. Pistana was able to kind of narrow my focus, go, look, you have too much, you have enough, you just need to kind of focus yourself. So I quickly learned how fluid the research process can be. You know, sometimes you have these great ideas and you just have to kind of get rid of them. And you don't know what questions to ask unless you're familiar with everything that's going around in the time period, because that really influences the events. My research centered on Sir Walter Raleigh and how in the years after his death he was created into an English Protestant hero. And this improved image of English pirates protected them from the crown, and for example, Captain Henry Morgan. And they tried to develop this rhetoric against pirates, and that's kind of what I was focusing on. So I was looking at things that the English crown and their affiliates released, treaties, transcripts, royal proclamations, Admiralty court records, accounts of the ordinary, to try to get a good grasp on where the crown was coming from. And at the same time, I wanted to be mindful of the public's perception, so I searched scaffolding speeches, ballads, poems, popular stories, everything that I could possibly find. And I couldn't have done it without the Clark Library, and I'm not just blowing smoke. They had documents there that were nowhere else. If I wasn't there, if I wasn't able to go there and handle them, I wouldn't have been able to do my research at all. My bibliography kind of tells a tale of time and how the sources show the changing and complicated views of piracy by both the public and the crown. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, finally, we're on to our last award. Finally, thanks to the generosity of Library Special Collections, we have a $350 award for the best use of resources from Special Collections. This award goes to Magdalene Schmall, Lucas Bensley, and Neda Hefsi for their website, The Black Prisoners Project. They created this project under the supervision of Professor Kelly Lettle Hernandez in the History Department. Please come forward. is identical. I just figured out, so it doesn't matter which one we got.
Hello, everybody. I have a cheat book, but I promise I'll be brief. I first met these three when they enrolled in my class on mass incarceration and mass deportation in the fall. And that was a large lecture course where we looked at, really it was one of the most pressing social issues of our time, which is the United States imprisons more people than any other country in the world. And Los Angeles imprisons more people than any other city in the world. So we are really the global core of human caging. And so this is the question that we looked at in this course. And these three students were exceptional in this lecture course. Not only did we read about the past and the present, but we visited numerous carceral facilities, jails, and prisons. You took your wonderful student to the Clark Library. I took my students to prison. And we got to really understand what it means to be caged in the United States today. And their performance in this course was so exceptional that I invited them to participate in a graduate level course in which we would do our own research, digging deep into the question in particular of Black imprisonment in the United States today. Now, a lot of people have looked at this story from a Southern perspective, that means the United States South, but we really don't know very much about Black incarceration in the West, in California, Arizona, and the US-Mexico border region. And this is the story that we investigated and excavated from the archives in our research course. And so I'll let them tell you about their project, which is absolutely phenomenal, but what I want to say is that no one has told this story before. No one has done the research about the experiences of Black prisoners and why so many African Americans began to be incarcerated in Los Angeles and the American West in the 1920s and the 1930s in particular. That's really the beginning of this story of mass incarceration today. So I'll let them tell their story, but you can also look at their project at blackprisonersproject.omeka.net.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? All right, good. So I imagine you have the same question I did when I first tackled this project. Why Los Angeles in the 20s and 30s? It isn't really the first moment in civil rights history that jumps out at you. But upon examining the material that our wise and nurturing professor provided us, we discovered that in Los Angeles at this time was a very vibrant community of African Americans striving to support each other and pursue the same goal of social mobility and the American dream as everyone else. These were shop owners, these were business people, these were local politicians, and it was also a time of great jazz musicians and great Dunbar Hotel and other avenues of performance in historic South Central Avenue that are still there, by the way. You can visit them anytime you want. They're literally living artifacts of history. But in this tale of social mobility and cultural renaissance is also a tale of increased targeted policing and mass incarceration techniques targeted at these very communities of color in a way that focus on the writing of law, the discussions on sentencing and the like, and parole sentencing, et cetera, and how exactly we focus on the lives of our prisoners before they entered the carceral system. And afterwards, we traced through this very research to try to add a very human perspective to what happened to these people beyond their carceral sentences. And I'll allow my partners to explain how we did just that. Thank you.
As Lucas said, this is a very human project. Each of us were assigned San Quentin inmates from the 20s and 30s, African Americans. And we were to look into their lives. So not just building up facts about when they were in prison. This is about their stories, about when, like, what were they doing before they went to prison, what happened afterwards. And in order to enhance this research, which we did through the library, we actually took a class field trip to South Central to visit the residences of some of these inmates, which gave us a feel of the neighborhood, of what this was all about. In addition to these narratives, we also wrote individual essays which came from patterns, interests that we saw within these individual narratives. Some of these include, like, Nada wrote about Wesley Robert Wells, Lucas about prison road camps, and myself about 1920s car theft. So Nada can tell you all about how we got there.
So we began our research through using Ancestry.com via the UCLA Library, and through there we were given clues about our prisoners, about who they are and where they came from, and then from there we were able to use the newspaper archives and research our prisoners to see if they were in the newspapers and see if we could find other information, and then from there we used UCLA YRL's collection, where we were able to find primary sources and secondary sources. One book we read about gave an amazing history on LAPD's black police enforcement, and through that would not have been possible without the help of the UCLA YRL collection. I'd also like to thank our professor. Without her guidance and the passion and love that she pours into her class, this paper and this project would not have been possible, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us for this celebration, and I encourage you to stick around to meet the students and their faculty. We have a reception and food and drink I hope you enjoy. And tomorrow, I hope you are able to return, and Friday as well, for poster sessions and presentations that are being given by more students doing fine research here at UCLA. So you'll find flyers for this on the table, on the registration table where the flowers are. So thanks again.